There's a law that states that, the body, the universe, nature, it never creates anything out of a desire. It only creates everything. It creates everything out of a need. So I'm like, if the body created the brain and the brain has the ego, there has to be a need for it.
Well, welcome back to the True Man Podcast. As a men's life coach, one of the questions I often ask people is, what do they struggle with? I'm always curious. And I'll be honest, many people have a hard time answering that question. And I don't think it's because they're perfect. I think it's easy for people to bottle up their emotions and suppress them. But, what do I know? So a lot of people have these challenges that they like to bury deep down inside. So let's talk about this a little and see if we can decode the challenge. So welcome Victor Manzo to the show. Vic is a former certified pediatric chiropractor. Yes, there's a story there and we can't wait to hear it. And he's become a business mindset coach. He's the author of 3 books. His most recent, Decoding the Matrix. Do you see how I did that there? Victor is the creator and owner of the Mindful Experiment podcast. I love that. Victor, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Oh, brother, thanks for having me on. I am excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's just wind up and go. Victor, tell us. You're a mindset coach now, but it probably didn't start out that way. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you get to this point.
Yeah, a lot of times people always, when I say I'm a certified pediatric chiro, that pediatric chiro will just throw people off right there. Like, wait a minute, there's chiropractors for pediatrics.
Hey, you got to ask after that, right? You got to ask. Well, like, what is that?
Like, how do the kids need to be adjusted? Hold on here. And then, taking that whole experience, and now I'm a business mindset coach. It's one of those things where I would be like, how do those two connect? And a lot of times we have to take a step back and look and say, well, what's really chiropractic? Because a lot of people think chiropractic is just someone you go to for back pain, neck pain, and headaches. And really, and I told my patients this on day one when they were in my office, that chiropractic doesn't treat any illness, condition, symptom, or disease. We don't do any of those things. And they'll just give me this look. I always get this like deer in the headlight looks most of the time, like, and I'm like, you're probably wondering, why are you in my office right now then? And then I will start to explain what we do. And what chiropractors do is we work on the brain. That's what we're mainly focusing on, and helping rewire the brain to help the body adapt better. That is literally all we do. And can that help with pain? Can that help with, a digestive issue? Can that help with, XYZ? Yeah, it can. Absolutely, it will. But it's one of those things where the premise of what we do is all neurology. And so my experience in my background, while I was learning chiropractic, I also studied energy medicine. I wanted to learn all that I could about healing at every level and every little thing. I was just a sponge of learning. And what ended up happening, though, in chiropractic, when you go to a chiropractor, you get an adjustment. And what the adjustment's really doing is removing something called a subluxation. Big fancy word. The way I teach it is just think of it as like a miscommunication. And what ends up happening is that when you remove that miscommunication, the brain and body work better. They're more efficient with each other, and which allows the body to adapt. So, but what causes that miscommunication in chiropractic is what we talk a lot about. And this comes all the way from 1895. So we're talking about some new stuff here. And what they said is that it's all thought. There's thoughts, there's toxins and traumas, but it's the mental, emotional stressors of life. And so when I'm working with patients and I'm doing stuff, especially in adults, and I can't break a pattern, or we're seeing something continue to show, then I'll be like, hey, you know what? Let's look at this. Let's look at these different concepts. There's emotional, mental stressors that you're dealing with, and sometimes it's playing automatically in the brain. Yeah. And so through my understanding of neurology and through my understanding of neuroscience, plus my background in energy healing and all that kind of stuff, it started in spiritual laws, universal laws, that I have always had an interest in understanding the mind better. It's just something I had ever since I was a kid. And so with all that, with the chiropractic, it kind of put it all together to where I got to a point where I couldn't share this in my office as much, because when people came to me, they wanted to go to the chiropractor. They didn't want to hear about mental stressors. And some people did, but I would say about 90% of my patients are not like, let's just focus on what we're doing here. And how
just hearing you talk about it makes me want an adjustment. I mean, can we do that virtually? Is that possible?
I wish it was. It is definitely what, we joke about it, right? It's with some of my buddies. I'm like, we got to figure out how to do a virtual adjustment. I mean, there's an energetic way of doing it, but I don't know if that's going to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, haven't tested that theory out yet.
So how did you get to, I mean, what piqued your interest at a certain point? I mean, what was going on in your life that you were like, this is the direction that I'm going to go in. I'm going to, I'm going to get into chiropractic. Like what was the trigger there?
That got me into chiropractic?
Yeah.
So I went to a chiropractor when I was like 9.5 years old to about 11. My mom has been going ever since about like a year after I was born. She's been to a chiropractor and went there for a little bit, and then just aggravated my mom, thinking I made it so difficult for her to take me to the chiropractor. She's just okay, fine, well, you don't have to go anymore. And but at 19 years old, I was playing rugby for Arizona State. I've been in nutrition and working out. I started studying nutrition at 16 years old. I've been working out since 13, lifting weights since 15. And my mom's a fitness instructor and yoga instructor. So seeing how she lived her life and what health looked like it was nutrition, working out, the kind of thing that people mostly think of. Fit bodies. I was like, okay, fit body, supplements, nutrition, and exercise. Got it. That's health. So at 19 years old, playing rugby at Arizona State and, being in, best condition of my life, being able to run a 5-minute mile. I ate pretty clean for a college kid. I had cheated here and there, but, and I took my supplements like anything else and one of those things. And what was happening in that first year of school is my health just kept declining. It was the weirdest thing. Acne on my back like I never had before. I had canker sores in my mouth about every 10 days, a new one pop up, headaches, sensitivity to light, digestive issues, a whole plethora of stuff. And the more sleep I got, the more or less sleep I had, it was not giving me the energy I need. I was very, very sluggish in the morning. So a lot of other things too, but long story short, thought I had a blood disorder. I told my mom, hey, if you can go, I think I have something going on. There's just too many systems involved here. I have no idea what's happening. She was going to get me into the doctor, but it took like a month. About 4 days before the appointment, my mom just all of a sudden one day was like, why don't you go see Dr. Frank? That was my chiropractor she was going to, and that was the former one I went to. And I'm like, you think you can get me in? If you can get me in like the next day or two, I'll be more than happy to go. I was able to get in the next day, and my whole life changed once he showed me what I had going on. Then here comes the whole thing. Like, wait a minute, you're going to do what to my spine? And you're going to tell me it's going to take care of everything? And he's like, I'm going to see you a lot in the first couple months. He goes, but we'll get your symptoms away in the first couple months. And then you got to continue going to a chiropractor. And I was like, hey, I'll do whatever I have to do for my health. And so then long story short, he was right. 2 months later, all my symptoms were gone. And 2 months after that, now I've been working out, I've been eating, I've been doing all the stuff that I've been doing. Nothing changed there. My body was not really defined muscular. I was just a big guy, but I wasn't shredded. And I'm like, it didn't make sense. I was running and doing all this stuff. 4 months after chiropractic care, I went down to 213 pounds and I was 10% body fat. Never been that shredded in my life. And I was like, okay, I didn't do anything different except chiropractic. And so once the symptoms went away and I saw that, it opened up a whole new world of what health meant to me. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to go into chiropractic and I want to learn more about it. And so I shifted my whole career from computer science. I went into business, and then from business, once I graduated and got my bachelor degree, then I went into chiropractic school, and I loved every moment of it. So that's how I kind of got into it.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to break a phone call off after we get done today. Cause if I can get shredded like that with more chiropractic care, man,
I hear you.
That's for the first phone call I'm making when we're done here.
So, I can't promise it does that, but
but
it was one of those things where for me, when you look at something from a scientific perspective and you keep everything constant, you make one change, you can literally go, it had to be that because nothing else changed.
Well, this brings up a good point. You're talking about a struggle that you had. I actually thought you were going to say I had to give up rugby, which seemed like the logical thing to do. Because man, that is one badass sport right there, friend. But
don't mind if I interject. I did have to give up rugby.
Okay, well there.
I did. I forgot when you brought that up. I was like, oh yeah, I did, because I had scoliosis. I had bending in my spine, and my chiro. The same guy who told me I couldn't play organized football at a young age. He's the chiropractor that held me back from playing, not really held me back. I just eventually just trusted him. Um, 10 years later, he goes, you can't play rugby anymore. You have to stop. And I was like, come on, this is like the most best sport ever. I mean, I played baseball. I'm a big baseball guy. And I was like, but this is just, it's not what you think it is. It's very strategic, 90% mental, only 10% physical, as much as it seems like it's more physical. And I was like, the camaraderie with the guys and just, it's like a brotherhood. And I was just like, I don't want to leave that. But unfortunately, I had to make a choice that was better for my health. So,
well, yeah, it's either that or you could tear your body up. But this brings up a good point, and I think this is, because a lot of people have that, we go through this struggle sometime between our mental and our physical, and it's hard to know sometimes which is which. I think. So you make this transition. Now you're more of a mindset coach. But how did learning what you learned in as a chiropractor help you become more of a mindset coach where you can help people with some of these struggles that they're having?
Yeah. So, as a chiropractor, we study so much on neuroscience and neurology, the brain, how the physiology works, how the body functions. And there's a lot of laws in there of the body and how it works. And so that was like the final piece to everything that I was studying, because I again, like I said earlier, I was very into energy medicine, and I want to understand. I was always a person about. I'm big into spirituality, not religion, just spirituality, just in essence of that. And I mean, I've studied multiple different religions, and I was always seeking. I always had a piqued interest in the mind at a young age, because athletes. I was always amazed, like, what makes a good athlete versus a great athlete. I'm from Chicago. Michael Jordan fan, unbelievably a Michael Jordan fan. So
amen.
He was someone that he is the pivotal peak of mindset. I mean, there's other athletes too, but he is that one who, again, he didn't have the best. He wasn't the most athletic. He was a great athlete, but he wasn't like the most talented athlete. When you look at like someone like LeBron James, who's bigger, faster, and stronger, Michael had to overcome so much against those individuals. But that's the mindset side. So I wanted to learn how does that happen? All these things. So I had a piqued interest at a young age. And I was always curious about the mind. I always loved to have deep conversations. And so as I started to get into a couple of years into practice, as I knew universal laws and all these other things, I started to apply them in my life. And then I was just like, but I kept getting these patterns that were coming up. I kept hitting these walls and these ceilings. And I'm like, why am I hitting these ceilings? Why am I hitting these walls? I'm doing everything that spiritual truths are telling you and quantum physics, and I'm hitting a wall. And then one day I was studying behavioral psychology, and they were talking about different aspects of the brain. And I'm going, oh my God, I know this stuff. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. So I started to look back at my stuff that I remember from learning in school about how the brain works, how it functions, different parts of the brain. And it was easy for me to connect the dots to where I was like, oh my God, my beliefs. Wow, my conditioning of my mind. Wow, here's this here. Everyone talk like in the spiritual aspect, or you see it a lot. Oh, you got to get rid of the ego. You got to defeat the ego. And that never sat well with me. And then when I started to study the brain, I was like, no. We need the ego. Man, the ego is very important. You just don't want to lead your life with your ego, but you got to learn how to play that game with it, because there is humans wouldn't be where we are today without it, and there's a beautiful thing about the ego that's very important. And again, it falls back into the laws of the universe, the laws of nature, the laws of the body. There's a law that states that, the body, the universe, nature, it never creates anything out of a desire. It only creates everything. It creates everything out of a need. So I'm like, if the body created the brain and the brain has the ego, there has to be a need for it. And so that's where the whole journey started to dive deeper, as I started going back, looking at my neurology, my neuroscience, and everything, how the nervous system's conditioned, how do we work with, and again, what chiropractors do, we work with something called neuroplasticity, which means we change the way the wiring of the brain is. Or I looked at things like Hebb's law and understanding it from a psychological perspective and a growth mind perspective, that Hebb's law states what nerves that fire together wire together. And so what that means is like, that when every time you fire a certain pathway, it gets stronger. It makes it easier to connect. And your nervous system works in a way where it's the law of least resistance, or the path of least resistance. And so it's like electricity. Electricity does that. So does your nervous system. And so how do I can help change people, not just from, I was doing that in chiropractic, just from my adjustments and everything we did. But now I'm like, okay, I want to create bigger effects and bigger aspects of individuals create deeper transformations. And so I was like, well, how I have the neurology now with everything else I do, I want to apply that and put that to work and start putting the principles together to teach people, share people, to really just get down to understanding their greatness and their power of what they want to create. Because I did that in my life and I saw the huge transformation, and eventually came to a point where I was like, I want to do this for people. And I got tired of that feeling inside of me. Like, what if, man, I would love to do this. What if and I just said, you know what, the heck with it. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to write a book. And then 4 months later, I'm going to start coaching. And it just did that. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Listen, I love you. I love that you bring up Michael Jordan. Of course, I grew up watching Michael Jordan like you, and, consider it to be, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, because this guy just like knew how to win, and he's just one of these guys that could kick it in and go to the next level. And so I'm kind of fascinated by that myself. Like, what does the elite person do that is so much better than everybody else? And so I say that to ask you, what have you found? Like, what separates? Because listen, the Michael Jordans of the world, it's applicable to everyday life. I mean, if you're leading a company, you're the Michael Jordan of that company. If we could play it like that. So, like, what separates the Michael Jordans of the world from everybody else?
Never getting in comfort, never staying there, always getting uncomfortable. I mean, look at Michael Jordan. He never wanted to be with the best players on his team. I'm not saying he had Scottie Pippen, he had Dennis Rodman, he had good players, but it was one of those things where he always wanted to challenge himself to the other players that were great. And it wasn't, I don't know Michael personally. I don't know the stories personally. Right. I don't think he wanted to, I don't think it was a level of like, yeah, I got you. I defeated you. Not from that place. It was more of like, I know you're great and I want to go against you because it's going to help me be better. Right. And so he challenged himself. He stretched himself every single time. I mean, heck, the guy misses a game-winning shot and he goes back and shoots another 100 some odd shots just to get that perfected. Right. I mean, there's others like that. Like Tiger Woods was like that. He messed up on a shot. Yeah. He's going to go back and he's going to redo that shot until he gets it figured out. And so there's patterns in this greatness. And I really believe that it's always, and we can take this from a business perspective or even just life and just look at it and say, always continue to learn, stay curious, don't get fixed, because the ego will try to keep you in a center place. Michael Jordan could have been like, hey, we won a championship. I said that when we had the Bulls were a weak team and look what we did. We teamed around and we won a championship. We're the best. He never was like that. You can look at every championship he ever won. Look at The Last Dance. When he won the sixth one, it was just as important as the first one. And it's one of those things that you can tell from him. It was always just about, I'm just going to give my best and show up and be my best every single time. And I would even say he didn't even show up as his best, because I don't know if you ever know the stories of Michael Jordan. He played harder in practice than he did in the games.
Yeah. Yeah. The stories about practice are pretty unreal. And of course, it's not a sports podcast, but if you get an opportunity to watch The Last Dance, I strongly recommend it. But I'm a little biased there because I'm a Bulls fan. But I love the whole idea around learning and being curious. How do you encourage your clients to do that?
You got to find, to stay curious and do, certain stuff like that. You got to look at it more from like an aspect of being like, I always say, you got to go back to being a kid. And I really bring that back because, and some people look at me like, yeah, you're going to tell me, especially if I'm working with someone who's like very business driven. And I'm like, we need you to be more like a kid. And they'd be like, what the heck does that mean? And because the thing is this, if you look at, and I'll pull some more stuff from Michael Jordan, because he had a vision, right? And when he first got onto the Bulls, he said it's going to be a championship team. He had a vision.
Yeah.
This is one of the most primary things I work on with my clients, is because you have to understand that there's a law that states that what you see in your mind's eye, otherwise known as imagination, is what you're going to be able to create. You're going to see it in your world. Bob Proctor used to say, what you see in your mind's eye, you're going to hold. What you see in your mind, you're going to hold in your hand. Yeah. And so Michael done this. Muhammad Ali did this. I mean, you look at the greats of the greats of the greats. They all did this. They had a vision. They were crystal clear about their vision, and they focused on their vision no matter what. Elon Musk is another guy who did that.
Oh,
When
man.
Tesla 3, the Tesla 3 Model 3 car was not being able to be produced. It was 2019. I'll never forget it. It was an interview, and the business world was smashing him. He was having negative returns, and they're like, why don't you just give up? You're struggling. You're having a failure here. You're having a failing there. It doesn't look like it's going to turn around. And he goes, I love what he said. And I'm paraphrasing this drastically, but he was like, you're looking at me based on my short-term results of where we are, but we have a vision long-term. Everything's gonna be fine. And a year and a half later, he was breaking records in the stock market and all that. And now he's the world's richest man in the world. So it's, again, having a vision is one of the most critical things. And this is where the kid light comes in, because I studied a lot of billionaires and millionaires, but I wanted to know, like, what do they do that, because they have so much on their plate. I was always like, what do they do? Is there a pattern? Are there clues to success? I mean, where's this at? And one of the things I studied about billionaires is they use imagination often. They constantly are looking at what they want to create, their vision and so forth. And when I started to see that they do this almost every day, it'll be like 5 minutes a day, they'll do something like this. Google took this on. They have a whole thing. I think it's like between 1 and 1:30, depending on the day of the schedule. They have a time where they let people, that employees can go and create and do whatever they want. Like, they create whatever project they want to work on, and they're all about innovation and doing these kind of things. And it's tapping into that imagination. So when I say being a kid again, that's what I mean, is getting into that imagination, because once you can see whatever you can see in your mind's eye, you have the possibility. It is possible for you to create that in your life. And so that's the premise of where I start with anything.
Yeah, no, it's, I like it, because one of the things I think we lose as adults is just our sense of adventure, right? Like, everything is so doggone serious. And I would say that anyway, but it feels like the intensity level, and there's a variety of reasons why I won't get into now, but I think we all know what it is. But it feels like the intensity level has just been so ratcheted up over the last, I don't even know how many years, but certainly during this COVID period. And this lack of adventure, I feel like, is just holding people back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't tap into that aspect of like when we were kids, you wouldn't be like, oh, I can't do that because of this or that or this or that, and have all these reasons. You just be like, I'm going to do this because I choose to do it. And as a soul, that's what we do. We choose what we want to experience. As children, they do the exact same thing. And as adults, we put all these limits on ourselves, and we hold ourselves in constraints and strengths, and can't do this or can't say that or can't do this or can't do that. And it's like we forget about being unique and really just understanding, like, be yourself. And this is something I work with a lot with clients about. And it's, so I went through this. I know how this is when it came from business and other things, where you're being told, like, I remember when I wanted to be a family, I was like, I'm a family wellness chiropractor when I first started. And my coach was like, well, you're gonna have to work. I was like, but I don't want to work weekends. I want to do this. I want to do that. And she's like, you got to have a Saturday for families because of blah, 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 blah. You have to do this because of this and this and that. So I followed the advice. I got this. I became very successful. Coach helped me out massively. But when I hit my financial peak, I was burned out.
Yeah.
I looked at my wife. I mean, we were making money doing, so we had an impact in the community where, I mean, everything that I wanted all happened, right? From a business and financial standpoint. I looked at my wife and I just go, if this is how this is, and this is how I feel and we're at this level, which I thought was going to be all glorious, I don't want to do it. I'll do something else. And so then it was, we really thought about it. I went into some deep thoughts of what I want to create for myself. And I started to go, you know what? Life's a game. I keep saying this, but I'm not applying that in my life. So I say life is all about a game, and there's rules and there's constructs, universal laws, all this great stuff, but I wasn't applying it. So eventually I said, you know what, hon? I said, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And she goes, you created a successful business. I joined you, 4 or 5 years after. She's like, and we took it to higher levels. She's like, yeah, I trust you. I said, okay, we're going to cut our hours to 18. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. And I said, we're going to go to pediatrics. That's what I really want to do. We're going to fire over 40% of my patients in my office. What we did is we looked at over a 6-month process and we said, who doesn't fit the office? And it was our fault. It's not the patient's fault.
Yeah.
It's what we allowed. And it wasn't fitting the practice of what we had. And so we shifted gears and I said, we're going to go pediatrics. We're going to take a hit. I don't know how this is going to go, but I need to go this route. And she was like, let's do it. And once we did, we took a hit. 6 months later, though, we were breaking records. And the reason I share that story is because there's a power of being authentic with who you are. And this is what I teach a lot of my clients, and I share often, because when you do what you love and what truly matters to you, not listening what someone says and not doing this, there's this level of energy you come with that's always high. And when you can keep your energy high, you manifest or create more of what it is you desire. It's so much easier to play there compared to, imagine when you're frustrated, you're angry, or you have fear. How well can you be creative? How well can you, right?
That's what I was going to ask you about, because you reached a point and you're like, wait a second, this isn't exactly what I was thinking. And you pivoted. What holds people back? I mean, you made a conscientious decision to make a pivot in order to continue doing what you were doing, but enjoy it more. What holds people back from making those pivots in their life?
Comfort and fear. There's both of them, because comfort is, well, I could have looked at it and been like, well, we're financially fit. Everything's going well. I don't want to risk this, man. I don't know if I can do something like that. Cause there's the comfort there of your lifestyle. But then there's also the fear, because now it's like, well, what if I'm reinventing myself and I'm going to come out as a different individual? I don't know if I'm going to be successful with that. That's a big risk. I don't know. And I've done this multiple times. I just did this 6 months ago again. And it's one of those things where, but the thing is, somebody asked me this before, and I love sharing this, is that, like, what's on the other side then when you get past fear, what's on the other side? I'm always like, it's freedom. Because once you let go of fear, you can actually, you can live. That the fear holds your dreams back. Fear limits you. It makes your focus and energy in the things you don't want. And that's a construct. That's a mental prison. There's so many things we can label this. Once you get past that, and you have faith in yourself to know that you can create whatever it is you desire. And once you get past that point, then all of a sudden there's freedom. And it's freedom in multiple levels, though. It's not just the freedom that, well, now I have this financial freedom, or wow, I chose to do something, I'm experiencing this, but that also gives you more confidence, because now holy cow, this is really true.
Yeah.
Wow, I made a choice. This is the life I wanted to go for, and it all worked out. Holy cow, what else can I do in my life now? How else can I take this further? What else can I do now? Because now you're playing in the game called life. You're not listening to others. You're actually choosing. And I even did this to the point, I played with this so much that I had a point in my life where I was like, I looked at my wife, I'm like, I want to work under 15 hours a week in the office. And she was just like, okay. And my coach at the time's like, it's a different coach now. And he's like, you can do it. He goes, why not? He goes, give it a shot. He was not negative about it at all. He was just like, you just think about it this way though, too. You might be creating more barriers to make it harder for people to come to you. He's like, just think about that. But he goes like, go ahead with it if you feel that's true. So I was like, I'm going with this 14 and a half hours a week. That's what I ended up practicing for over 3 years. And the last 3 years of my practice. And it was one of those things where everything again, you make a change in chiropractic, any change that happens at least from a chiropractic perspective in an office, there's going to be at least a 10, 15, 20% hit. And what that means is some people are just not going to like the change. People like comfort. So when you make a change on them, even when I changed the supplement and I told them this supplement's even better, it's new stuff, blah, blah, blah. They added new things. Here's new research. They'd be like, no, I want the old one. And I'd be like, hold up. I just told you how this vitamin D is way better because it added this couple things and it triples the amount of absorbency rate. And they're like, no, I still want the other one. And I'd be like, wow, okay, this is so weird. But yeah, so it's one of those things where, making that choice empowered me in so many different ways, because then all of a sudden I was creating the life of what I wanted. And like, I'm a coach now, right? And I joke about this a lot. I don't joke about it. I'm serious it's a new thing I was sharing with a client just last week. We were talking about the law of least effort and, how I worked with my practice in the certain way I did it. And I was like, he's like, what are you trying to do right now? I'm like, wait, I'm coaching. You're my client. I'm coaching you. He's like, no, I'm just curious. What's a vision of yours right now? I said, I want to have a 6-hour work week. And he just looked at me. I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious. A 6-hour work week. He's like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, you don't need to know the house. That's what gets you in a trap. I'm like, that's my vision. Now I know I have a plan. I'm not saying the plan has to go that way. I'm very open-minded about the plan, but I'm in a direction where I'm like, this is the life I'm going to create for myself. And I'm just very destined to make that happen.
Well, listen, I can appreciate that. I don't know how many times, and I suppose I'm like the average person where I just get stuck in the how. When you get stuck in the how, I mean, you can just live in it.
Yeah.
Indefinitely. And as an entrepreneur, that's a dangerous trap to be in. But I mean, it's just a dangerous trap for anybody.
And when you look at when you take a step back, right? Because everyone thinks about that, like, well, how can I get there, man? Even the brain will trick you. There's many things about the brain and the neurology of, like, when you think of, like, let's say you're making 50,000 a year and you want to make 7 figures. Yeah, that's a huge gap. The brain's going to shut down. It's not going to, you got to break it down. It's just the way the brain is. Anytime. That's just why, like, anytime, like big words, like whenever I use the word subluxation, I always be like, scrap that out of your mind. Don't even think about it, because as soon as someone thinks of something like, that's a long word, what is that?
Yeah.
Their brain's just going to shut down. But we also, if you look at how self-help, personal development, you look at business and entrepreneur and all this. I was part of a coaching group that I just fired a month ago. Because one of the things they were doing is just jamming down, like, just do this, do, and sell to people how. They just wanted to be told how, what, 5-step process, do this, do that. And that's what we seek as a culture. We're programmed that way. Self-help and personal development. Here's the 5 things you can do here. Here's the 3 things you need to do here. How many times are we being told how to think? Nobody, and it's very rare. This is why I became a coach. There are not many people telling you what to think. And start to empower yourself. I always use the analogy, and it's a parable in the Bible. Jesus taught, or I don't know if it was Jesus, I can't remember, but it was the whole fish. You give a fish for a day, you feed a man, but then you can go teach him how to fish, and you feed him for a life and all that. And that's the how versus the what. If you're teaching people the hows, you're only teaching them how to be fed for the day. But if you teach them what to think, now all of a sudden you taught them how to live their life in whatever way they want. And it's a different process, but the answer and solution to that is, it's like the man's search for meaning. Viktor Frankl, he said it best. It's when you focus on the why, you can, the hows take care of themselves, or you overcome the hows or something like that. And this is that power. And there's so much truth in that, from spiritual laws, from energy, from quantum physics, all these different things that support that quote, to show and we've heard this so many times. How many times have you heard, focus on the why, just focus on your why and you'll overcome any how. But there is such a deep principle to that. But the problem is that we have in society today, what I see at least, is that nobody really knows what they want. Yeah. We have an idea, right? Think about that. We have an idea, but that idea is not yours most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, because what happens is, and I've been stuck in that too.
Me too.
What do you want? And you're like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go out on Google, and maybe Google can help me answer that question. How many people have done that? Everybody's laughing right now that's listening to this podcast. I mean, we've all done that, but what is it? And, for me, it stimulates ideas. Sometimes I'm not looking for the answer in it. I'm looking to stimulate ideas, and that's a quick form of doing it. And that's why I circle back. I call it our just fast food culture, right? We've gotten so used to, like, everything being right there at our fingertips. If you don't know what it is, just grab your phone and Google it or whatever, or ask your phone. It'll give you the answer. And there's just, I feel like a real loss, a critical loss of thinking, and the ability to just really be creative is lost in that. Do you feel that?
Oh no, I'm 100% with you. I mean, it's just one of those things where you understand we're so locked into a left brain dominant world, which is logic and information and all these different things, that we forget to feel. Like, we forget to tap into this power. And a lot of times when I say feel, some people are like, well, yeah, I'll think, or I'll think of something, or I'll ask a question, and then that'll be that. And I'm like, you're still in your head. You got to think of the question. I'm like, you're still there. Like, that's a backward process. I'm like, you got to get into the feeling, like, use your body as a tool. Your body is so, I mean, our brain is more powerful than any you can put all the supercomputers together in the world and our brain's still better. And our body is one of the most advanced technological things that we've ever experienced. And we only know 10% of it. All the medical science, everything that we've studied and learned for hundreds of years on the body, we only know about 10% of what it does. That's it, 10%. It might be 11 or 12. It's been 10, 12 years since I've been in school. So it's been, it might be, 12, 13% now. But when you really think about that, we don't know 90% of what the capability, the power, what the body can do. But yet, one of the things we do understand is that there's this thing about feeling that can guide you in so many ways. And it's not just a woo-woo thing. Sometimes when I talk about feelings or intuition, a lot of times people are like, oh, that's that spiritual stuff. No, it's not. There's neural. I can take you guys through it really quick. Just think of someone who you love and appreciate and who you really have just a love, someone who's just very dear to you and you just love them dearly. You're going to feel some sort of lightness in you. You're going to feel something in your stomach maybe, or your chest. There's going to be that's a physiological response. And this is from the neuropeptides that get created in the brain. Once they get released, then all of a sudden it creates this whole chemical reaction that gives you emotions that you'll feel. Now, the opposite is true too. If you think of someone you can't stand, you hate, or dislike, or whatever it may be, you can feel your body gets heavy. This is the most simplest way that you can use your body as a tool to feel. And it's very important. So when you're like, for anybody who's thinking about like, how do I have to do this? How to get out of that? Don't even think about that. Get into the why and use these two things as a tool to just get into the feeling. And when you start to feel this lightness, you start to feel good about something, you feel energetic, and you get this like little kid feeling coming into you. Follow that. You don't need to understand it. Don't put a label on it. Don't try to, because when you try to get your intellect onto things, you limit the process. Remember, your left brain puts things in boxes. Your right brain's like, how can we open up all the boxes? Right? The right brain's like, let's stop limiting things. I'm infinite. I mean, even just from a computing power from the right side of the brain or left side, your left side of the brain can only handle 7 bits of information plus or minus 2. I think it's every second. The right side of the brain is about 1 million bits of information, give or take, plus or minus. I don't know if it's a couple 100,000 there or something, but you can see the difference in computing power. And when you're in this feeling state, you if you just don't get so intellectual, you can actually harness stuff, power, feelings, and so much more. Things will come to you. You may not understand them. Sometimes like when I'm doing deep meditations, things come to me. I have no idea. It's a feeling. It's an energy. I've been feeling this all my life. So I'm very easily to not try to figure it out. I'm just like, all right, I don't know what the heck that meant, but I'm just going to go with it. And, it'll all come together eventually, because it always does. And it's one of those things where now you're starting to tap into your power and you're not limiting yourself. Because when you get into the mind, 95% of us are living our lives on autopilot. It's driven by the subconscious mind. And so, but the same thing, a lot of times there's books out there and stuff, they'll tell you like, oh, you can consciously habitually, just do habits and consistent and habits and all these things, and you can program the subconscious. I'm like, you can do that. It just takes a lot of work. Or you can use the feeling side, which is actually what programmed the subconscious mind, and start to shift it.
Yeah. And it's why what you're saying there is why I encourage people to have a coach, because listen, for a lot of people, there's work involved in this. I mean, like, I'm more into when you were describing, think of somebody you love, and then I could feel it in my body, but that doesn't, that's because I've done a little work. So like instantly I can hear the words and it just kind of comes over me. 10 years ago, it just probably would have gone over my head. And I think that that's the beauty of working with a coach, is that you can really get more in tune with yourself by studying yourself, and sometimes two heads are better than one. And that's why I've always loved the coaching process. Lord knows, I've had a lot of coaches in my life on a variety of different things, quite honestly. So I encourage that. I'm sure you do the same.
I'm 100% with you. I've never had not a coach. And, just to add even to that, I got 21 years of nutrition experience and self-taught in so many different ways. I studied so much. And yet when it comes to my nutrition, I have one of my good friends who's very into nutrition and health. He's a chiropractor too. And I will always run everything by him first before I do. He's my coach. Hey, This is what I'm trying to accomplish. What do you think? Here, do this, this, and this, and you should do that. All right, great. Or here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what I know, but you tell me what you think I should do, and I'm going to do it. So I'm taking myself out of the picture. I have a chiropractor. I know over 36 different techniques in chiropractic. I'm very science-based in chiropractic, also very philosophical. And
I didn't pick up on that.
So it's like one of those things where, but when it comes to my health and the chiropractic side, like I've told my new chiropractor I told him, I was like, hey, I'm your patient. Yes, I'm your chiropractor. I mean, I'm a chiropractor. I adjust him, he adjusts me, all that stuff. But I'm like, I'm going to come to you for whatever chiropractic stuff questions I have. You're my chiropractor. I seek to your advice on what you're going to give me, even though I may know some of the answers already. There's one thing I learned in chiropractic school that I was very appreciative of hearing this quote, and I made sure I was never going to do this in my life. And that is, the doctor who treats himself is only but a fool. And that was a very powerful quote, because I thought about that for a second, and I was like, okay, I'm always going to have a coach for performance, for, business and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, got my chiro coach. It's just my chiropractor, but then I have my nutrition coach. And, and I told my wife, next year, I want to get a fitness coach. I already know a lot of fitness. I'm in good shape and everything, but I was like, you know what? There's levels I can go deeper that my mind will hold me to. But if I have a coach, he or she's going to push me and help me break through barriers. They'll see other things I may be missing, and they'll help me to accomplish even deeper levels It's
a total complete level of accountability. And you have to walk through that door to appreciate it, I think. So, and I'm very pro people. Hey, walk through the door. There's no shame in that, walk through it, because you can go deeper. You can have more, and it's awesome to experience. So with that, hey, Victor, listen, want to give you an opportunity. We'll, of course, put all this information in the show notes, give you an opportunity. How can people, as we wrap up today, reach out to you and contact you and learn more about what you do?
The best way to get a hold of me or to follow what I'm doing is my website. It's empoweryourreality.com. I got free sources on there, the podcast, blog, and all that good stuff. You can get my new book on there. It's right in the middle of the page. You scroll down to the bottom, you can catch me on social media. I post a ton of stuff on there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. So always posting, always sharing. And if you have any messages or questions, anything here that we discussed, I direct you, DM me. I do look at them. I do respond. I love hearing from people because I do this out of a passion and a purpose from my life. And it's just enjoyable to be a kid creating and learning and sharing what I learn along the way.
Well, there you go, Victor. It shows up. Your enthusiasm and passion comes out as you talk about it. And for that, I have a great appreciation. So thanks for being on the True Man podcast today, Victor. Really appreciated having you on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.